Here is something no one wants to admit. The person who controls your emotions controls your life. Not your boss. Not your partner. Not that stranger who cut you off in traffic. Whoever can make you react without thinking. They own you. And before you tell yourself, I'm not easily triggered, think about the last time someone said something and your chest tightened. Your jaw clenched. You either snapped back or shut down completely. That was not a choice. That was a reflex. And here is the uncomfortable part. You have been training that reflex for years. Every time you reacted, without pausing, every time you let someone's words decide your next move, every time you convinced yourself that your anger was justified, so you never questioned it. Most people think emotional control is about staying quiet, about suppressing what you feel. They believe calm people are either cold, detached, or simply born with thicker skin. They are wrong. What you are about to learn is not a breathing exercise. It is not a mindfulness cliché. It is a complete rewiring of how you understand the trigger itself. Because the trigger was never about them. It was always about you. And once you see that, really see it, no one will ever have that power over you again. Most people approach this backwards. They focus entirely on the external, the rude comment, the dismissive tone, the person who always seems to know exactly which button to push. They ask, how do I deal with difficult people? That is the wrong question, and it keeps them stuck. The real question is, why does this specific thing affect me this deeply? Because here is what the psychology actually shows. Your emotional reactions are not random. They are precise. They are surgical. The things that trigger you most are not coincidences. They are signals, pointing directly at your unresolved wounds, your untested beliefs, and the parts of your identity you have been protecting without realizing it. Most people think emotional sensitivity is a flaw in their nervous system, but the truth is, it is a map, a very accurate map, and most people never learn to read it. The person who learns to read it does not become emotionless. They become unmanipulable. That is the shift, from reactive to sovereign, from managed by others to rooted in self. You are not here to learn how to suppress your feelings. You are here to understand them at a level most people never reach. And once you reach that level, staying calm does not require effort. It becomes your natural state. Let us build that. Principle 1. The trigger is never the cause. Here is the bold truth. No event triggers you. No person triggers you. What gets triggered is always something already inside you. Think of it this way. Two people receive the same criticism from the same manager in the same meeting. One walks away slightly annoyed but fine. The other spirals for 3 days. Same event. Completely different internal experience. The difference is not personality. It is unfinished emotional business. The psychology behind this is called activation. Certain experiences in your past created deep emotional templates, blueprints of what is threatening, what is humiliating, what equals rejection or failure. When something in the present resembles that template, your nervous system fires as if the old wound is happening again right now. The common mistake is blaming the present moment for an ancient pain. The correction is this: the next time you feel triggered, pause and ask not why is this person doing this, but what does this remind me of? That question alone interrupts the automatic circuit. It moves you from the brainstem to the prefrontal cortex, from pure reaction to conscious observation. The identity shift is this: you stop being a person things happen to. You start being a person who notices what is happening within them. Principle 2. Your nervous system has a threshold, and you have been lowering it. Here is what most people miss about chronic emotional reactivity. It is not just about specific triggers. It is about the overall state of your nervous system on any given day. When you are sleep-deprived, overstimulated, chronically stressed, or running on unprocessed emotions, your threshold drops. Small things feel enormous. A casual remark feels like an attack. A minor inconvenience feels like a catastrophe. Your nervous system does not distinguish between a real threat and a symbolic one when it is already flooded. It just fires. The common mistake is trying to manage triggers one by one, in isolation, while never addressing the underlying state that makes you hyperreactive in the first place. The correction operates at the system level. Sleep is not a luxury. It is a neurological foundation. Unprocessed emotion accumulates like physical debt. You need deliberate discharge, movement, reflection, honest conversation. Your baseline state determines your reaction speed. Raise the baseline, and minor provocations stop landing. The identity shift is this: you stop treating calm as something you chase in the moment. You start building it as an infrastructure. But this is where it gets deeper. And I will get to that when we talk about what is actually driving the need to react in the first place. Stay with me. Principle 3. Ego is the real reactor. Let us talk about something people rarely name directly: Most emotional triggers are not about values. They are about ego. Ego, not in a negative sense, but in the precise psychological sense, is the constructed self-image you carry. It is the story of who you are, what you deserve, how you should be seen. When someone challenges that story, even slightly, the ego reads it as an existential threat. That is why criticism from strangers can ruin your day. That is why a sarcastic comment from a coworker can replay in your mind for hours. The ego does not distinguish between physical danger and a threat to its narrative. The common mistake is defending the ego as if it were the self. It is not the self. It is a story about the self. And stories can be rewritten. The correction is a practice called ego observation. Instead of asking, "How dare they say that?" ask, "What belief about myself would have to be true for that comment to hurt me?" Often, you will find something uncomfortable. You will find a fear of being inadequate, of being irrelevant, of being unworthy. The trigger is the mirror. The person who triggered you is almost irrelevant. The identity shift is this. You stop needing to protect an image. You start standing in something more stable. Actual self-knowledge. Principle 4. The pause is a superpower most people waste between stimulus and response. There is a space. That space is everything. Every calm, grounded person you admire does not experience fewer provocations than you. They have simply mastered that space. They have learned to expand it, even by a fraction of a second. And that fraction changes everything. The psychology behind this is straightforward. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, responds in milliseconds. The more deliberate, conscious part of your brain is slower. Reactivity happens when the amygdala acts before the rest of your brain can intervene. The pause gives your higher cognition a chance to catch up. The common mistake is believing that because the reaction feels automatic, it cannot be interrupted. That is false. The correction is a deliberate, practiced pause, not a suppression, a breath, a deliberate drop of the shoulders. A single internal question. Is this worth my energy? You are not avoiding the situation. You are choosing your entry point into it. Over time, this pause becomes instinctive. The gap between trigger and response widens. And inside that widened gap, you are in full possession of yourself. The identity shift is this. You are not someone who reacts. You are someone who chooses. Principle 5. What you resist emotionally, you energize. This one is counterintuitive. And most people never figure it out. The more fiercely you try not to feel something, the more power it accumulates. Suppressed anger does not disappear, it compresses, and compressed emotion detonates. Not always in obvious ways. Sometimes as depression, sometimes as a sudden, disproportionate outburst over something minor. The psychology here is called emotional resistance. When an uncomfortable emotion arises and you immediately label it as bad, wrong, or threatening, when you fight it, you add a second layer of suffering on top of the first. Not only do you feel the emotion, you feel afraid of feeling the emotion. That fear is often more destabilizing than the original trigger. The common mistake is treating emotional control as emotional avoidance. The correction is presence without merger. You feel the anger, the shame, the hurt, you let it be there, without acting it out and without collapsing into it. You observe it with a level of detachment. There is anger here. I see it. I do not have to become it. This is not weakness. This is the most sophisticated form of self-regulation that exists. The identity shift is this. You stop fearing your own inner states. You become someone who can hold discomfort without being destroyed by it. Principle 6. Chronic reactivity is often a loyalty to pain. And now, the layer most people never reach. Sometimes we stay reactive not because we lack discipline, but because reactivity serves something in us. There is a part of some people that needs the trigger, needs the outrage, because without it, they would have to confront a quieter, more unsettling reality, that they are responsible for their own state, that no one is coming to validate how much they have suffered, that the identity of someone who has been wronged, while painful, is also comfortable, familiar, even protective. If you release your reactivity, you release your grievance. If you release your grievance, you release a version of yourself you have been carrying for a long time. That is threatening, even when it is also liberating. The psychology behind this is called secondary gain. Behaviors that appear destructive persist because they are also providing something, protection from vulnerability, proof of worth, a reason not to move forward. The common mistake is addressing only the surface behavior, the snapping, the shutdown, the resentment, without examining what that behavior has been providing. The correction requires honesty. That is rare. Ask yourself, what would I lose if I stopped reacting this way? The answer will tell you more about yourself than almost any other question. This is where it gets deeper still, because everything we have covered so far, has been building toward one final realization about who you actually are underneath the reactions. Escalation phase. As we have talked about triggers, nervous systems, ego, pause, resistance, and the loyalty to pain. But here is the level that changes everything. You are not your reactions. You know that. You have probably heard it. But here is what that actually means in practice. Every reaction you have ever had, every moment of rage, of shame, of defensive shutdown, was performed by a part of you. A layer, a conditioned pattern that formed, often in childhood, to help you survive a specific environment. That pattern was intelligent once. It protected you. It made sense in its original context, but you are not in that context anymore. And the part of you that still runs those old patterns has not updated its information. It is still operating from a threat assessment that may be decades out of date. This is not a metaphor. This is neurological reality. Patterns encoded under stress become default pathways. They fire fast, they feel true, and they demand expression. The work, the real work, is not about becoming a different person. It is about recognizing that the reactive person was never who you fundamentally are. They were a strategy, a survival strategy, brilliant in its time, limiting now. When you see your reactivity as a strategy rather than a trait, everything shifts. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are updating yourself. And updating is something a person of awareness does willingly, even gratefully, because the old strategy served you, even as it cost you now. This is the transition from managing your emotions to evolving past the version of you who needed to react in the first place. That is not a tactic. That is transformation. Final revelation. Here is the insight that ties everything together. Emotional triggers are not problems to be solved. They are invitations to be answered. Every person who pushes your buttons, every situation that makes your blood pressure rise, every comment that keeps you up at night, is pointing at something in you that is still unfinished, still waiting, still carrying weight it was never meant to hold permanently. The people who never triggered you, they had nothing to teach you about yourself. The ones who did, they revealed the exact coordinates of your next growth. This does not mean you should tolerate mistreatment. It does not mean you become passive. A calm person is not a weak person. Calm people can hold firm boundaries with absolute clarity, precisely because they are not driven by panic or wounded pride. But it means this. You no longer need the world to behave a certain way for you to feel steady. You no longer need people to stop being difficult for you to remain in your own power, because your stability is no longer dependent on their behavior. That is sovereignty, not the absence of emotion, the mastery of your relationship to it. And that quality, that unshakable internal ground, is not something you are born with. It is something you choose, repeatedly, deliberately, until it becomes who you are. Think about the last time someone triggered you. Now ask yourself, not what they did wrong, but what that moment was trying to show you. Because if you can answer that question honestly, you have already begun. You are not here for the quick fix. You are here because something in you recognizes that real calm, real groundedness, real power is possible. Not as a performance, as a foundation. That is not common. Most people never get there. But you are watching this. You are still here. That means something. Calm and I choose awareness if something in this video landed for you. Not as a ritual, but because naming a shift is how you begin to own it. And share this with one person who needs to hear it. Not because they are difficult, but because they deserve the same clarity you just found.